welcome to the official part 1 of Advanced Bunker Texturing. This is CE Sim Golf. I debated which video to do as part 1, whether creating the actual image texture or doing the 3D work was a better first step. You could go either way. But the first thing I am going to talk about is setting up some Photoshop files that are ready to go to create the textures. Not to completion, but just kind of the get going. So the idea is to have some files ready so that we can work and make variations on each one when we want to do a new bunker. Because unlike tiled textures, where every bunker, every sand trap on our course uses the same tiled sand texture that we've found and love, we're going to be using a totally unique texture for each bunker we want to do this with. And the reason is, otherwise they'll look very repetitive. And the whole goal of this process is to make each bunker unique. So that's why we're going to set up a base file or two that we can easily and quickly adjust to use for each individual one. So let's jump into Photoshop. Alright, so here is one, pretty much the main base file I use. Now you might recognize this. This is the regular tiled texture that I use for all of my normal bunkers. It's a raked texture. It is already repeating. I have manually tiled it, just using layer copies and stamping in some variation here and there so it doesn't look like it's too repetitive. So, like, you know, you can kind of see there's some tracks running through here that are kind of repetitive, so you can use the stamp tool to sample our areas. Anyway, I have set that up as my base file. Now this is a 4K image. It's 4000 wide, or at least I'm going to refer to it as a 4K image. The tricky thing with this process for me, and maybe there's a better way to do this or to know how to do it, let me know, is depending on the size of your bunker, you can't really use the same sized base image, because if your bunker is small, then your rake line that you have in this pattern, well, that rake line is going to take up nearly the entire width of the bunker. And depending on how you paint that in there, it's going to look really strange. Whereas if you have a large bunker and you use the same image, you might end up with rake lines that look tiny. So you kind of have to play with the size, and most of the bunkers that I've created, I've been using textures half this size, 2000-ish wide textures, because I feel like, and I'm guessing here, if I used a 4K or 8K texture on each UV map bunker, that's probably going to hurt my performance. So, I mean, we're using 8K textures for our satellite shader, and that covers the entire course. So I figure I can get away with a 2K or maybe a 4K on a large bunker. So, but what I set up here is a 4K one, and then I can make it smaller and take parts of it for each bunker I want to do. Now there's some other reference images that I've gathered and pulled in, and I'm still looking for some of these. It's winter here, so I can't go out and photograph too much. But for instance, I found some pictures of footprints. So I have some of those in there. I think I downloaded one of these pictures, and I think I actually took one of the pictures at my local course. I've also got, let's see, I'm going to zoom out where I put it. There, I've got animal tracks. I thought, hey, I always see deer walking through our bunkers. I'll just grab some of those. I've got just some different types of sand textures here. I've got some leaves that I pulled in here, and you can find these anywhere. In fact, I think these leaves are a portion from Megascans from Quixel. But anywhere on the internet you can find high quality pictures of this stuff. Use it. But some of the prep work, you know, erasing backgrounds, things like that, can be a pain in the butt. I also just have some roughed up area over here. This is just some unraked sand to add in some areas that are just a little rougher. So you might be wondering, okay, you've got all this stuff in here, but none of these look correct. Like they don't match, right? I've got how many different shades of sand. I've got some black, kind of brushed, roughed up look. None of these animal tracks. This is where just the Photoshop knowledge, skill, and just some artistic eye really come into play. For me, the easiest way to do this is a hue and saturation adjustment. So for instance, I'm going to grab the footprints here. I can put them anywhere I want, right? And I can do this later on too, but I'm going to go in here. I'm going to just have that layer selected. Over here you can see each individual image is on a layer. I'm going to change my saturation down so it, it kind of matches that. And then I can change, my darkness down. You can use Control L is another favorite of mine. That's levels. That's going to be dynamic contrast. So, you can get darker and lighter throughout. You can make the blacks and darks pop more. You can make the highlights pop more. And you're going to have to go kind of back and forth on this to kind of find what you want. And that's why when I make my base file, I don't really worry too much if things match from a color standpoint, because I can go back and do this work later. And this bunker doesn't just have one base in it. This is my raked base, but I also have this base in here, which is an unraked base. It's not super chunky, but it's just a fine sand texture that's not raked. But as you can see, all that work I did to match here, it doesn't match this other base. So you might have one favorite sand, you might have a whole bunch that you want to use. So you can have as many base layers in this one file as you want, and then you'll need to tweak back and forth all these little additions and rough up areas to match whichever base you're going to use. And I would suggest using the same base layer. If I erase all this other stuff to hide it, I recommend using the same base sand layer that you're using on all your other sand traps on your course so that it matches. So there is consistency that way. Now you're wondering, where's the rake lines, right? Because that's really what everybody seemed to like in my bunkers, is the kind of the unique rake lines. Well, let me tell you, there is a lot of ways to do that, and I've tried many. I tried everything from just drawing in brown rake lines, which sort of worked fine. That was some of the first ones I've done. But I think I've gotten better, and I've gotten to a point where I really like the way I'm doing it now. This is my favorite. Let's see, let's get rid of that one. This is my favorite right now. I think this looks really killer. But it took 3 different layers to produce this. And I will get into the specifics of that later. Got to hold out a little suspense on that. But I do have layers set up with the effects I need so that I can go in with a brush, and I can just kind of add those kind of at will. But there's a lot more to it than it looks like. Like you see, that's not looking nearly as good. I'll get to that in a little while, but let me tell you, that is definitely been the most time consuming. But I think using this technique, I can show you how to do it and do it well. I'm going to cut this video off already on this one, and we're going to get to the next one, which is going to be about how to map your bunker, the UV mapping in Blender that will give you the shape you need to start painting what you want it to look like. All right, time for video 2. See ya.